Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Happy Life with Maria podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest, Miss Courtney Beck, who is a speaker, a host of a Plenty of Positivity podcast, a former athlete, and actually also a teacher. So, welcome, Courtney Beck, to the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Maria, I am so excited for this. Obviously, we were just talking about this. I am thrilled to be here. You have such just beautiful energy and such a
Aw.
positive light, not to mention that we have kind of something in common. We have the happy life with Maria, and then we have plenty of positivity with Courtney Beck. So I'm thrilled to be here, Maria.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's very interesting how you were saying the universe aligns the people that are similar vibe together, whether we like it or not. We crossed paths in the most unusual way, and here we are. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you. Welcome. So why don't we start with a little bit about your background? If you could walk us through how you started and where you are now.
Absolutely. So, born and raised in Florida, so the Sunshine State. Yay. I'll start with that, but only child. And growing up, my life was literally academics and sports. So, it implemented that sense of discipline right away, structure, and time management into my life. But I dabbled in a couple of sports, but particularly the sport of gymnastics, I just lit up. Like every day when I was in the gym, it was it was that idea that you could always work on something. I mean, as we know in gymnastics, and some of which the different levels have different structure to it, but gymnastics is known as that perfect 10. So you are always trying to strive for perfection.
Yeah.
And I loved that about gymnastics. I loved the fact, even though the hours, as just in any sport, the higher that you go, the hours are also pretty consuming. But I loved the sport. I feel like even on those bad days, I was still excited to push myself. And it stood with me. It didn't get old as far as the schedule. Got out early from school, went straight to the gym every single day, 5 days a week, 5 to 6 hours a day. And it's just, I don't know, it brought me to life. And I would continue on. I made it to the elite level in the sport of gymnastics. And then I went on. There's kind of a short story in between this too, as well, that maybe we could dive into. But
Let's dive in.
so I'll give the whole story and then I'll come back to it.
Okay, okay.
I moved to the collegiate level, competed at University of Florida. So incredibly grateful for that opportunity. I was a walk-on, and then I would ultimately become part of just a spectacular team each and every year for those 4 years. Became an NCAA All-American, and I was part of 2 SEC championship team titles. So I give all the credit to just all the family and just teammates that surrounded you during that time and the coaches that truly believed in you. So I'll start there.
Amazing. That's amazing. I mean, what a background. Thank you for sharing.
Well, and I think what's so interesting about it is, as I look back, it was always, and we're going to get into this. I know we were talking about this before, but following your heart during certain points. Like I like to follow my intuition. And so in that particular time that I was talking about, I actually stopped the sport in high school, and it was wear and tear. I had an elbow injury.
Oh, wow.
And it was interesting though, because I think it was a blessing in disguise, because I got to experience so many other different sports. I was in track and field. I dabbled in tennis, which ironically it didn't actually bother my elbow. It was more of the pounding. Yeah. And this is because I have this interesting story with that. And then I did cross country, but I will tell you, I did cross country strictly to stay in shape.
Wow.
It was so hard. I mean, anybody who does just that endurance type running, I mean, hats off to you. I came in last. I think honestly, every single competition I was in or race, it was just it wasn't one for the book, should I say, but
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing. So, as you were progressing on your journey, then you became a teacher at the state university?
yeah, yes. So as I said, I would go back on to gymnastics. That led me into college. I graduated with a degree in advertising, came home, and at that point in my life, I really didn't know where I wanted to go for that next step. So I jumped back into academia, got a master's in communication, and
Wow.
then this is interesting, Maria. So I decided to go into medical sales because dad was in medical sales for a really long portion of his life. And I don't know, I wanted to be like dad. I was a little bit lost at that point, and I'm like, okay, he's doing it. I kind of have heard this lingo throughout the years, not saying I knew it, but I want to try to do what dad did. So I did
Okay.
that for a little bit.
Okay.
I ended up going to get my MBA. And then at that
Wow.
point, it was this sense of I love sport. Like I really do. I love sport. It was my whole life. And long story made short, I ended up going to get a PhD in sport management. And then I became an adjunct professor. So that leads us to present day.
Wait a minute, PhD in sports management?
Yes. Well, and this is something I have to tell your listeners. So the PhD, that was never in my cards, so to speak. It's not like after my undergraduate degree, I was like, okay, eventually I want to get a PhD. That never crossed my mind as far as even my family goes, as far as people who have their PhD, it was non-existent. And so I had gone to a sport management conference as I was just about to graduate to get my MBA.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, okay, what is the next chapter? What could it possibly look like? Could I be, I don't know, working in the athletic department or something in sport? Well, when I
Okay.
went to this conference, 10-minute conversation, that's all it took. And she's like, hey, you should think about a PhD. Well, Maria, I could not let that go. I'm like, that's just like, fly that's flying around and you're just like, let me go. So I was like, okay, if it's meant to be, I'm going to apply to it and I get in. If it's not meant to be, I apply to it and I don't get in. Well, I got in and then there you go for another 4 or 5 years. There I was.
Oh my God. That is amazing. That's a huge accomplishment. I feel like that's a huge accomplishment. You should feel very proud of yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, and I think, what's really interesting is you go through those programs, it taught me at least so much about persevering, about just that personal growth, your character development through those programs. So it wasn't just, okay, you have this knowledge now specifically in sport. Like, of course you do. But it also taught me about really pushing the limits that you never thought you could push. Like, I mean, there was times I'm like, literally, I knew I had to write a paper and I would be up at like 3:30 in the morning because I knew I had to finish it. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, I never thought I would actually be able to do that. And I don't know where my energy came from, but I got the job done. But it was like, wow, like there's limits that if only you knew, like you have the potential to take it to that next level if you believe in yourself and if you keep persisting. So
That's amazing. What a great message. I really love that because that's true. A lot of times we don't even know what we're capable of until we are faced in that kind of a challenging situation. And it's like you have to make a break and and you choose to go for it. And then you discover about yourself, well, like, wait a minute, I can do that.
well, and I think especially for that particular degree, those like terminal degrees, it really is about not only obviously understanding that specific expert or area of expertise at its highest level, but it's really pushing oneself and understanding what you are truly capable of achieving when you set your mind to something, when you are able to follow through, stay committed. And these are the lessons, honestly, that sport taught me. So I was grateful for the sport of gymnastics and to be able even to make that comeback at the collegiate level. It just taught me never, ever quit. There may be times when you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make it through? No, you're going to make it through, Courtney. We're doing this. We're staying committed.
Yeah, it's happening. There's no other choice. I love that. That is so interesting because I think that's true though. The sports and the discipline, even going for the PhD, all those things really teach you a lot about yourself. They teach you a lot about life. They teach you a lot about, how to achieve those goals, how to keep going, how do you get that extra gear when you're already at the capacity.
It's true. It really is. And I think to your point, as I look back, there's so many connections when we talk about just life in general, but then also how powerful sport truly is. And that's why, I mean, anytime I just see, whether it's young teens or children dabbling into sports, when I talk to parents like, oh, is your son and daughter in a sport? It's so exciting because I think about the big picture. It's not about learning just that specific sport. And regardless of if they don't continue doing it on past a certain point, but it's like, what was that foundation that it laid? What were those lessons learned? The teamwork, if it's a team sport, if it's understanding what a goal is and how powerful a goal can be when you commit to that goal and you're able to see progress from point A to point B. And so it really is, it's like that big picture that I would take on with me into my career, and even understanding, especially with anything that's entrepreneurial, like things don't happen overnight. So what keeps you committed? What keeps you going? And I draw it back from sport.
Wow, wow. No, thank you for sharing. I absolutely love that. Which, as you mentioned, entrepreneurship is bringing us to the current project that you have going, the podcast that's called Plenty of Positivity, which I believe you started last year, which has been a very interesting journey. And I believe it taught you a lot about your purpose, and talk about that project.
Thank you so much for mentioning Plenty of Positivity. I truly, I light up when I talk about this. It's began, should I say, as a passion project. It was that idea, just like what I was saying. I love talking about life lessons. I love talking about sport experiences, career experiences, but then also what brings us truly together is that idea that we all go through challenges in life. We all, different issues may come up or arise at different points of our life, but there's inspiration in that. How did you overcome those challenges? And when somebody else could hear maybe your story, you never know when you could be inspiring somebody to kind of take that leap as to whatever they're doing in life. If it's, starting a new business, if it's maybe, hey, I've always wanted to try this sport. Maybe they're younger and they want to go into another sport, but I don't know. I don't know if I could do that, but I heard their story. So if they could do it, I could do it. And so that's really where it stemmed from. Life, sport, and career are the underlining components of Plenty of Positivity. But then also the positivity part, if you will, it really came from the fact of when I would go on the internet, I felt like all I was seeing was negative news. And I'm a pretty positive, happy person. But if that's affecting me, could it be potentially affecting other people? So that's why I was like, what's the name for this? Plenty of Positivity. So we focus on positivity, but something I really, really like to stress with the overall message is my 3 C's: communication, connection, and community. So being able to really focus on pulling people back together. And that's what the mission is. It's dedicated to building a positive community for a better tomorrow. So different components, but I'll start with the podcast first. So on the podcast, we have just a variety of people that with different backgrounds, different upbringings, and even different career paths that come onto the podcast. They share their story, perhaps the lessons they've learned along the way. And we always leave the audience with a positive message. That could be, I'm a big quote person.
Yes.
So I always like to ask for a quote or a phrase, but it really is, it's just to be an outlet for positivity that, life can sometimes get hard, but this is an outlet you could always go to that's going to be uplifting and kind of having that more optimistic look of life.
I love it. Yes, the podcast. Thank you for sharing the podcast idea. I'm very connected to the idea. Like you mentioned, my podcast is also Happy Life with Maria, and I also love to spread positive messages. It is very important because, I think we were talking about before, positivity can be a choice, right? we don't have to, go, go, go and, connect to the negative news. We can make a choice and shift and go where the positive side is. Talk about that.
Absolutely. So I always like to lay the foundation that, I mean, sometimes people will indirectly bring up, is this toxic positivity or something? And I'm full disclosure. I mean, there's not every day that I wake up, it's not, oh, this is great. I can't wait to start. That's not the truth, right? We all have our days. But I remind myself we have a choice every day when you wake up to choose positivity. And when I need that extra boost of how do I get into that mindset, I always go back to gratitude. What can I be grateful for? The fact I woke up
Yes.
today. I view life each and every day as a gift. So I want to amplify that gift. How could I give back? How could I be just a better version of myself than I was the day before? And when I get into that mindset, it really does. Like if something kind of started off my day wrong, I shift automatically to that. And you see like just a different perspective, I think, to carry on your day. So it's a choice. Each and every day you have a choice when you wake up to be positive.
I love that. Yeah, I think people forget that. I feel like we don't, yeah, thank you for sharing that. We don't really give ourselves enough credit and how much, free will and choice we really have about how the day goes. Yes, negative things happen. Yes, difficult days do happen. That's life with everybody. The same with me and Courtney. We all have difficult moments, difficult days. It's not always rainbows and butterflies, but but we consciously do our best to look at the positive in every situation, to do the gratitude practice. Gratitude really shifts a lot of the mind negative because whatever you focus on grows, right? So if you're focusing on being grateful for the small things in life, you see more of it, right? If you're focusing on, all the negative things that happen, then you're going to go down that spiral and it's just going to amplify and multiply.
Well, and it's so true because I probably learned, if I look back, like the first time that I really, I guess you could say, learned about a positive mindset or a positive attitude, and it goes back to sport when I was younger.
Mhm.
Because as I mentioned, I mean, those practices were pretty long, like 5 to 6 hours. And say that you were starting off on a bad note. Maybe you were not doing so well in the conditioning part of your practice before you got to your events. If in fact you took that negative attitude, that negative mindset into the rest of your practice, that's going to be a pretty long practice, if you know what I mean. 5 to 6 hours of just sheer negativity and a negative attitude. So I think I would look back and I would think to myself, okay, how do I make the most out of this day? Maybe conditioning did not go as, is the best as I wanted it to go, but I could at least have whatever 4 or 5 hours left here to make something of it. And I think from that point on, that's where I think I laid the foundation of understanding what a positive attitude really is and how powerful a positive mindset could affect the rest of your day. So it was in sport, I like to really go back to.
Wow, but that was such a perfect because it's a real life example of you are in a situation where you didn't start off, the best, but you have a choice, right? What do you choose to do for the rest of the 4 or 5 hours left? And that is such a beautiful example. I think that's just opening my mind too. I'm like, wait a minute, even if you are, training for sport, same thing.
Well, and I think that's what's so interesting is that those lessons that I learned at such a young age, I now take into my career. So it's the same thing. You wake up, whatever you're in, if it is in entrepreneurship, and say that you're, remote, you're by yourself and stuff, like to be able to find that energy, to be able to overcome maybe a challenge that happened the day before. How do you do that? And that's where I feel like sport was such a profound, it really was a solid foundation that was laid where I could always resort back to that. And how did I overcome those bad days? And to make the most out of life. And I still take that with me into my professional career, whether that's in teaching or if that's in my kind of entrepreneurial adventures that I'm taking right now.
That's amazing. I absolutely love that. And speaking of entrepreneurship, I know we mentioned before the idea of social entrepreneurship where, people kind of go and do what they are passionate about and what they love doing and going against, I guess, the so-called norm. Talk about that. Like, how do you feel about following a person's passion, which I guess you're kind of doing with the new Points of Positivity project?
Absolutely. So I had graduated with my PhD in December of 2023. And I was really at a crossroads at that point. I knew I was going to be an adjunct professor moving forward. However, I was thinking, what else could I do now that could really help others? And I want to lay the foundation because this really does lead into this question. But it was this idea that when I looked at gymnastics and I looked at my time in academia, I always liked to set goals. I liked to try to achieve my fullest potential. Not saying that you always would, of course, you never know, but setting those goals, when I did that, I reached those goals in gymnastics and in academia. And now, as I would move forward, I have such a passion for teaching, being able to give back, even some of these life experiences we're talking about, adding those into, just educating students that not only there's the topic matter, but hey, this was my career experience. It wasn't just a linear straight line, but I was sometimes lost. And so that's why I love teaching. But as I would go forward into this entrepreneurial adventure, it was that idea. I wanted to give back now. And I saw certain, I think if you could say, just challenges in society that were kind of bothering me. I would read about different statistics, but I'm thinking, as I would literally look in the mirror, I'm like, well, what are you, Courtney Beck, doing about it? And so
Wow.
it was.
That's a powerful question.
I do like I like to take action. That's not necessarily saying that action is going to be guaranteed success, but it's at least what I always thought about with Plenty of Positivity and taking more of that unconventional route was if I could just focus on the impact and the message. Those are the two words, impact and message. Then setting out, in my opinion, and doing this and following through would be, quote, success. And so it was more unconventional. I mean, typically out of a PhD, you would go full-time teaching or perhaps full-time, research track. But I decided to go in this direction simply because of kind of what I was seeing in society. And then just like a desire to do something that was bigger than myself, not saying that you would ever achieve it necessarily, but you're aiming for it. So
I love that. Thank you so much. Yes, it's like making that choice to go in the direction of your dream, of your passion, of your why, right? You have a strong why of why you are choosing to do something that is a little bit outside the norm, but it's a choice you choose to make because you see something where you want to make a change, and the time to make a change is now.
And Maria, I think that's such a good point. One other thing I want to bring up is the idea, at least for me, this is my own personal experience, but following your intuition, I really felt deeply compelled to go in this direction. And the one thing I will say, and you had mentioned it just at the beginning, I've been doing this now for just over about a year. And the people that I have met, I mean, unbelievable. Yourself, I mean, Happy Life with Maria. It's just like super supportive people, very passionate people doing whatever it is within their area of specialties that they're trying to make a difference in. But I don't know, it's very contagious. And alongside of that, to be able to find that community virtually, it's been so exciting. It's been something, quite frankly, when I first started out, I never envisioned where I would be at this point, but then also the people who I have met. It blows my mind. So I say all this because you never know when you take that first step where it may lead. You may have your vision statement, you may have your, mission statement, but in all actuality, it's just me kind of walking in faith and hoping that along the way that you will meet the right people at the right time to just help you with that message, to magnify that message and to help others.
Yes, thank you so much. That's so true. I love what you were saying because it's true. Like I'm also very big on intuition. We could go into that for a long discussion, but to make a long story short, yes, I believe that when you follow your intuition, in the beginning, you don't really know why, where, how, all the detail, but you just know you have that strong feeling that this direction feels right. But then as you start living in that direction, these surprising things start to happen. And little by little, little by little. And even with you, I follow you on LinkedIn. I saw you mention that now you have speaking engagements. You get offered in person, amazing speaking engagements just because you started to talk about what you're passionate about.
Well, and I think I'm so happy you mentioned this, because if anybody is just ready to take that step but still has that sense of self-doubt, I just say go for it. Because Valerie and I, we had actually spoken about this. Valerie Probstfeld, a shout out to her, but we had spoke about just this like childlike imagination and being willing to go for things. Like if you ask a question, for example, being curious about something, but maybe following through with that and seeing where that may lead. It's almost as if, as I look back, the times that I have been either hesitant or had a little bit of self doubt, it was, oh, well, what are they going to think of me? Or like, if I do this, and when you finally take that step, you never know how that can maybe even help somebody else. But the power, like you said, of following your intuition, not everybody is going to understand it. There will be naysayers, there will be critics along the way. But at the end of the day, I think if you really do have that pure intent as to what you are about to either embark on or that you're currently embarking on, that the universe really does have a way of pulling together the people that you will need along the way, just to motivate you, to help you, or to inspire you along the way. So I just encourage anybody, if you're, willing to take that first step, you never know what's on that other side.
I love that. Yes, thank you for sharing. Absolutely. I absolutely believe the same exact thing that you never know. You don't know. You are not really in control, like we were talking about before. Like there is a higher power, whatever you call a universe, whatever belief, faith you have. There is somebody else at play. So we can, plan and do as much as we possibly think we can do. But ultimately, we don't really know where it's going to lead us. We don't really know how the next step is going to unfold. So all we can do, like you said, was small steps. You follow your intuition, you do the gratitude practice, you take small steps at a time, you have your intention, you want to help people. Who do you want to help, right? And then you just stay one tiny thing at a time. Doesn't have to be anything big. And then you never know how these little things really add up. It really does add up in a way that you can't even imagine. You don't even see it in the beginning, but somehow it
And
adds up.
another thing, Maria, I'd like to add is
Yeah.
to your very point that just because you take that step, it's not guaranteed, quote, success, whatever success looks like in your mind. But the one thing I really like to point out that really gets me over that sense of self doubt to take that first step is I like to project myself, just say, I think of this image of a rocking chair. Okay, bear with
Okay.
me.
Okay. Okay.
So it's a rocking chair. Say, God willing, I'm there 80 years old, sitting in that rocking chair, reflecting back as to different, things that I've either gone for in life, or reflecting on, yikes, I wish I would have done that, but I didn't.
Ah,
And
wow.
that's what really, when I take time, and I do this, like I said, when I'm on a walk, or I said, if I'm about to start something and I just need to get over that sense of self doubt, that image and that thought process really pushes me over the edge to say, hey, yes, there's no guarantee that there will be success. However, I could never live with regret because I tried.
Oh my God, that is such a beautiful point you're making. Yes, if you fast forward to towards the end of your life, when you're in your 70s, 80s, 90s, and you look back on it, how do you view your choices, right? Is there something you wish you would have done but you didn't? And then that level of regret, you don't want to be at that level of regret when it's already too late, when you're in your 80s. So that what is it, Dr. Wayne Dyer, he always says, don't die with your music still inside of you. Meaning if there is a message, yeah, if there is a message, if there is a passion about something that you want to share, the time is now. Do it now. It doesn't matter if there's success or not. At least give it a shot.
You can, that's what I mean. You'll never live with regret. You at least say, you know what, I tried it. It may not have worked out the way I envisioned it, but you'll never live with regret. So I think that's just, it really is. It's that message that will help you at least get over that first step, or to launch whatever you want to launch, if it's in business, or to take that first step to jump into another sport, whatever the capacity it may be.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of launching something, you mentioned that you have a new project called Energized Thinking. Talk about that.
This is so exciting, Maria. I mean, you could just feel the energy. I want to say that this is a project, it's a very positive project between myself and Breen Nadim and Valerie Probsfeld. And I could talk about, literally, this could be an hour in conversation as to how this came up, but I'll give you the short version at least.
Yes.
But I'm going to take it even just from kind of just my thought process through this. I love to learn. I love to learn even outside of my particular expertise, if you will. And what's interesting is the degrees that I would get throughout the years, it was very broad. Okay. So whether it was communication, an MBA, of course, business, very broad, very general. It was only until my PhD that I really, quote, specialized, if you will, in sport management per se. But my point is that I always love to learn about different areas of expertise or different disciplines. And so I was able to meet Valerie. I want to give a shout out to Des Haig, because he kind of indirectly on LinkedIn introduced me to Valerie. And Valerie and I just hit it off first conversation. And it was about so many different things. It's about fitting in life, and these conversations that I was thinking in my mind. And when she verbalized it, it was like, you too? You're experiencing that too? And so we instantly connected, and it was over that idea that we love to learn. We love to talk about things that perhaps, I don't know, affect society or impact our daily lives. And then she introduced me then to Ambreen, and it was the same conversation. We love to try, keyword try, to come up with solutions to real world problems, real world challenges. And there's something very powerful about being able to, and this is what we're going to be doing, it's a podcast, but having these meaningful conversations, really promoting, that's really what it is. It's like promoting education, continued learning. But how, when we start going into different disciplines of, say, psychology, neuroscience, sport, maybe AI, specifically AI, because that's, of course, a large topic.
That's like the new topic of everybody's mind.
But it really is. It's not saying that we are experts in it. We're going to bring on the experts to become
educate.
Exactly, for them to educate, for us to be curious from our point of view, and to ask those meaningful questions. And so it really does, I think, as to why the audience would want to tune into Energized Thinking. It's about just understanding that, yes, we don't have all the answers. We are not saying we have all the answers, but it's promoting curiosity, critical thinking. When you think about literally what critical thinking is, looking at all aspects of something, being able not just to look at one side of a story or one particular, end, but to look at everything, how it's going to be affecting maybe different industries. And I just think about, AI, different industries, how it's going to impact, the pros and cons, really taking a deep dive into analyzing, observing. And that's really what it is. It's a podcast. We're going to be promoting education through just educational posts, uplifting posts. But that's what it is.
I absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing. What an exciting idea. I am all for that, because yes, I think, to always keep learning is to keep living, right? Because if you're not learning,
And it really is. I think, to your very point, it's promoting. We have a pretty large vision, if you will, but really sparking this curiosity movement of, no matter where you are in life, never be afraid to ask questions. Because personally, we were kind of talking about this. But as we get older, I think about my personal experience, you slowly stop asking questions. You just, whatever society, like we were talking about, even societal norms, whatever society tells you to do, that's what you do. But what happens if there's a whole other field out there, or when we combine different disciplines, maybe we have a more clear understanding of a concept or a topic of discussion, understanding how it's affecting this industry, how it's affecting the other industry. And so it really is, it's something brand new. And like I said, you start something and you see where it goes. But I'm just very passionate about education. I still have that one foot into academia, but then also entrepreneurial. Never be afraid to try something new.
I love that. Yeah. And it's like what we were saying before, right? Once you start to follow your passion, your purpose, your why, so you start with a plenty of positivity, and that's leading you to in-person speaking engagements, and that's leading you to connecting people on LinkedIn. And now it's leading you to a new idea, energized thinking. Like all these things just kind of happen organically where you couldn't even plan it if you wanted to.
That is such an excellent point, Maria, that you bring up, because when I started Plenty of Positivity, as I mentioned, I had the vision, I had the mission statement, but at the same time, I was always open minded. I was open minded to other individuals that I would meet, and perhaps their area of expertise, if you will, as long as it aligned with Plenty of Positivity, because that's what I always draw everything back to. Does it align with my mission and vision? So, looking at the big picture, is it going to have a positive impact on others in some way? Well, drawing into this particular example, energized thinking, it's educational, it's promoting continued learning, it's really promoting curiosity and critical thinking. Well, that's important for anybody in any industry for that matter. So as long as it aligns, I would always go back to Plenty of Positivity. But I would say that just to your listeners, never be afraid to be open-minded and kind of allow the path to flow. And if it feels right and it aligns with your values, it aligns with what you're doing, hey, give it a try.
Oh my God, what a beautiful phrase you just said. Allow the path to flow. Like that's the key, right? You don't try to control and be like making a rigid plan about it. No, you got to be open. And
Well,
that's when new ideas flow. But if you try to control, you're closed off. You don't know what's coming, what's possible. When you feel like you're the only one that's in control, you're not.
well, and to your point, Maria, I really do have to amplify what you just said. In full disclosure, I was always that person that, okay, it has to be planned. I have to know exactly what I'm doing. And you're right, like, quote, being in control. But when you just allow life to pan out, and like I said, as long as you have that kind of that navigation system, and I would consider that like your values. What do you stand for? What are you willing to do that does not go against those values? Or what is your intent? As long as it's positive intent, you go for things. But it really does, it comes back to just being in flow, being allowing things to unravel in its own time, not forcing things, but that you never know. That's what this real whole like taught or road has taught me, as far as a path that I've taken, is to allow things to come to you, that you don't force things. But if somebody comes into your life and they have something that's very much aligned with what you're doing, hey, maybe that's going to be a neat collaboration. So try it.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what I would absolutely agree with everything that you're saying. I wanted to ask you now one specific question. If you were to reflect back on your journey so far, which has been amazing, what would you say are two biggest life lessons, one or two biggest life lessons so far that you have learned on your journey?
Oh, that's a good question, Maria. You hit me on the spot on this one.
I'm like, right into it. We go right in because as you go through the journey, you start with one thing, and then you have this discipline, and then you have this structure. But then you start a second thing, which is a little bit less structure, but then you have to kind of adapt and flow. It's such an interesting flow.
No, that's so true. And I would have to say, so I'll start with number one.
Yeah.
Never fear failure. And I am I really do. I talk about it in any type of speaking engagement, but I'll never forget when I was younger, my father would always tell me just that. When I would be, oh, I'm going to go try this new sport. When I was out of gymnastics and I was going into another sport, he always told me, hey, Court, never be afraid to fail. And it's essentially the same message, right? Never fear failure. Go for it, because you never know what could be on the other side. Like I said, the people that you meet, maybe you become more educated in a different area that you otherwise, if had you not taken that first step and never quote feared failure, you would have never been able to educate yourself in that particular area. So I say this because it really does, it navigates. Once I would go out of academia, I then was in medical sales. I then went back into academia for quite a bit of time, and now into entrepreneurship. And that's what's exciting about entrepreneurship. As we all know, it's uncertain. It's not saying that there's a guaranteed success, but when you take that first initial step and you, like I said, you set failure or the, idea of failure aside, maybe you go in a different direction that you never saw before. That's so much more meaningful and so much more exciting. So never fear failure would be the number one lesson that I have learned throughout my years. And then the second one, oh,
Wow. As you're
control.
thinking about the second one, can we go back to the first one? Because that is beautiful. I'm just picturing little Courtney Beck and her father telling her, don't be afraid to fail. Because as a child, you are very scared, afraid to fall. You're afraid to try. You're afraid of all kinds of things. How did you allow yourself to listen to what your dad is saying? Because that must have been scary.
Well, and to your point, so dad would say it, right? But I would really learn about it through experience. And my first experience would be gymnastics. So when you think of gymnastics, most of the time you see those like perfect routines that have been executed on TV and the practice that goes behind it for so many hours leading up to that. I mean, like I said, 5 to 6 hours a day, some of those girls are training. But when you're in the gym, let me tell you, Maria, it's not always flowers and roses and stuff. You take quite a bit of falls. Not all falls are able to get back up again. You go through
Wow.
injuries, right?
Wow.
But I say that because it was gymnastics. It was the fact I remember, and I've spoken about this before, but when my head coach, when he would look me in the eye and he would say, hey, Courtney, I know you're ready to do this skill by yourself. You do not need a spot anymore. I trusted that. And that's what allowed me to go. Even if I did the skill and say I just kind of fell flat on my face, which sometimes it did happen, but I got back up. Well, in your career, okay, yeah, you may not physically fall on the ground, but you figuratively say like you get let go, or say that things don't pan out the way that you thought they were going to. I go back to that. I still picked myself back up. What could I learn from that
Ooh,
skill that I fell, from, and how do I make it better? So it was the
perfect.
idea of dad telling me about that, but then me literally living it out.
I love it. I think your second lesson right there is what can I learn from the failure? Because that's the part that people are so afraid, thinking it's such a bad thing, but it can be a good thing also.
Well, and I think that that's the thing. It's embracing that, is that we're all human. We're bound to make mistakes. And I think once you accept that, you're more willing to go through like doors, so to speak, that you've never walked through before, with a sense of that courage to take that step, to build that confidence. And once that confidence starts building along the way through different experiences, you become less and less worried about, what are people going to think of me? What happens if I do fail? That becomes an afterthought. It's like, this is the life that I want to live. I want to make a difference. I want to take that first step forward to making that positive change. But you have to have the courage and you have to have the confidence. And to me, that was built throughout the years. That doesn't happen overnight.
Wow, no, that's a really strong point you're bringing up about the confidence part, because That is a skill that I feel a lot of people think that you're born with confidence. You have to develop it, and you can learn to be more confident. And I think sports is a really strong example of that, because in the beginning, when you started gymnastics, you probably were not confident.
Yeah, no, and that's so true because you're right. When I look back, at least in gymnastics, and I think about the girls that I was training with, say, like at the very beginning, you would see some of the girls they were all about risk. So they wouldn't be scared to do things. They would just do things, right? Whether it's skills that you were learning, new skills during the summer. But then you also had a lot of girls who were very fearful of moving, or doing that skill without a spot per se. And so, yes, I do. I feel like it certainly could be learned. I think that really does come from repetition in anything you're doing.
Mm,
When you are able to practice at something over and over and over again, that's where that confidence is built. To
mm.
then, when you are on a big stage, it comes naturally because you've practiced so much. You're not nervous. You feel that sense of confidence.
That's amazing. Yeah, the more you practice it, the more you do it, the doubts go away, the fear kind of goes away, and you're filled up with know who you are, you can, you cannot do. And you've already failed so many times that by this point you're already like, who cares?
So true. It is. I mean, the repetition, I do. I think about the times in the gym before you were on that stage competing literally in front of thousands. Because people will ask me to this day, my gosh, University of Utah. Okay, so Utah Gymnastics, their facility could hold upwards to 15,000. They were one of the largest crowds that we had ever attended back in, I was there 2006 to 2010 at the University of Florida. But when we traveled there, it was lightning. And people ask, like, how did you remain so focused? And it really was. I would always go back before I mounted any type of apparatus. I would think to myself, Courtney, how many times have you done this routine, right? How many times have you been in the gym? I mean, blood, sweat, and tears, right? You take those experiences and you apply them. Whether it's 5,000, whether it's 15,000, it doesn't matter. It's you and that beam, you in the, floor exercise, right? You don't think about, so-and-so's, screaming this and they're doing this. You're so focused on what you're about to accomplish that it's all positive self-talk at that point, all positive.
Wow, that is a very strong point. Exactly. I love that. And I think the key thing you just said is the self-talk, right? How do we talk to ourselves? Because really a lot of the mental, I guess, the state that we are in depends a lot on how we talk about ourselves, not so much as how others are talking. A lot of it has to do with how are we talking to ourselves. And I think that's also something we can practice doing.
It's so true. And I have to laugh because even at the very beginning, you had mentioned just my background and stuff and where I'm at today. And I think about, because my husband and we live in North Florida area, but he is the one sometimes when I need that extra boost of confidence, if I need that extra boost of literally positivity, say the day didn't go so well, he's that one that's like, Courtney, what is the name of your business? Plenty of positivity, right? Snap out of it. We need that positive self-talk. And so I laugh because it's so true though. It's so important, I think. And that kind of leads me into this conversation of how important it is to have a positive, a solid support system to
Yeah.
always center you back. And we talk about positive self-talk a lot and how important it is to remain positive even during those, not so great times or during those challenges in life that inevitably presents itself along the way.
Yes, because a lot of it, your life is literally affected about how you perceive it, how you think about it, how you think about yourself. So let's say it's your own positive self-talk or your support system is helping guide you to that positive state. Whichever way, the goal is to believe in yourself. The goal is to think of yourself as somebody who is good, so who is capable, who can do this. Just that mindset of positivity alone can take you a lot in life. People don't realize, but that's like a huge component of achieving anything in life.
I 100%. And I think it's important to also add that that support system does not have to be, 20, 50 people, right? Surrounding you, like tons of friends and stuff. But it really does. It comes down to just that nucleus that you could always turn to somebody to say, really kind of center you back, to look at, hey, this is what you've accomplished. Never forget your path and how far you've come. But then also look what you're capable of doing. Look what you've already shown that you could do. And once you get back in that mindset, that sense of really a positive mindset, not to be so cliche here talking,
No,
but
but it's true.
you start to believe in yourself more. You start to think, yeah, I have overcome some challenges in my life. And if only I could apply that to this present moment, perhaps who knows what could come of it, right? So it's just about
Wow.
holding that positive, just the, couple people
Wow.
sometimes is what it is. It's not many people, but just people to recenter you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that is a very powerful message right there because, knowing that you can ask for help, you can ask for somebody to be a supportive person for you, right? If you yourself are having a situation, you can ask, and you never know. People love to help. There's a lot of people that do love to uplift and to help. If you don't pay attention to all the negative news, there are a lot of good people out there.
Well, and, to your very point, talk about an excellent lesson too. Never be afraid to ask for help. Never be afraid to just ask people for their, if it's in your career, professional advice. Hey, I'm kind of stuck here right now. How could I get to that next level? What do I need to elevate myself? Do I have to, practice more on X, Y, and Z? Whatever it is, but never be afraid to seek constructive feedback, because that's really what is going to help you through life progress. Not being able to think that you could do everything by yourself or that you know of everything, but to reach out to people who maybe you look up to. Maybe they could provide you that advice along the way. And that goes back to, just never stop learning, being curious about things. How can I get better? So
I love that. Yeah. So if we were to so we talked about the past, we talked about the present. If we were to look in your future, what do you envision? Big picture, what do you envision?
oh my gosh, that's a really good question, Maria.
Nothing too specific because I feel like, certain things you got to keep to yourself, but
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because my husband and I, we've had this conversation before when we talk about past, present, and future, and how important it is to really just live in that present moment, that sense of happiness. But yes, you're right. You always have to have a sense of direction. Where would you like to be headed? Not saying that's guaranteed that that's going to pan out, but having that direction is important. And so I would just say, really just focusing on the things that I'm involved in, serving others. This is a time of my life where I've had all this experience, whether it's in academia and sport, and I'm ready to now provide people, if it's assistance, if it's advice, if it's anything that's going to be positive to make that positive impact on their selves, even into teaching. I love to teach. Being an adjunct professor has been such a blessing to be able to meet new students every semester when they come in and helping them along their
oh,
career path as well. And so,
wow.
yes.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I think as we are approaching towards the end of the podcast, I have this little game I like to play. It's called Question Everything. And
Love it.
these are cards, random cards with questions that one of my favorite podcast hosts came up with. So I kind of bought it from her. So basically, I'm just going to pick like two random questions.
I love this. This is the curiosity thing. Like, always stay curious, question everything, please.
Question everything. Yeah, it says question everything. So, so okay, let me pick a question. Ooh. There's so many good ones. Okay. A lyric, a poem, or a mantra that you live by.
Ooh.
That's an interesting one.
This is an interesting one. The first
Yeah.
first song that comes into mind, I don't know if it's necessarily like one that I live by per se, but that I turn on this song when I just need a positive boost of energy, but Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
Ooh, talk about that.
Mountain high enough. I'm not a
No
singer.
mountain low enough.
Ain't no river
River wide enough. We gotta
to
sing along
keep
today.
me from
Getting to
getting
you. Woo! I love it. I love it.
but that would be the song. Like I said, I really do. I go back to that song when I just need to be uplifted. If I'm nervous before I'm about to do something, I just blast that song. I sing, I dance, and then I'm like, okay, collect yourself and go.
The same. I have to put on music and I dance because I think I mentioned before my passion in life is dancing. Like I like salsa dancing. I like all kinds of dancing. That's like that's like my passion outside of work is I dance, I perform anywhere I can. And so when I need that boost, I put on the music and I dance for at least 10 minutes. And then it's like a whole new person comes out.
I don't know what it is, Maria, but you're right. Being able to dance to your favorite song, for me to pretend I could actually sing, but I know I can't. It's like, I don't know, it's so empowering. You're, whoa, it gives you that jolt of energy that you may need. And then you're able to refocus. And that's what I do because I have so much energy. I have to be able to contain it and to be able to focus sometimes. But sometimes what I really need is to dance it off. And then I come back and I focus.
I love that because that's true. Like before we get to the next question, but that's true. Like the physical movement really helps with the mental state a lot. Like people think that, you just think your way out of, but sometimes you got to physically move.
Well, and to your point, just to say one quick thing, exercise. I exercise in the morning, especially if I'm about to do a podcast. I get all my nervous jitters out of me. But once I come back, I notice a difference when I do exercise and I work and when I don't exercise and I work. It's honestly, it's night and day. I feel like my clarity of thought is amplified when I've done physical exercise and I come back and I'm able to focus. Just a thought.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because people forget, but physical movement is just as powerful to get you in that state of mind as anything else. Yeah, I think that's a strong one. Thank you so much. Okay, the next question. Oh my God, there's so many. Okay, I guess what is your earliest memory of success and how does success look to you now?
Oh,
Ooh, ooh,
this,
ooh,
oh, this is
ooh,
good.
ooh, ooh.
Oh my gosh, if we're talking about career,
Okay.
and that could be, I'm gonna kind of angle it in gymnastics, if you
Yes.
will, because those were my early years, if you will. I would say, my experience in college, being able to be a walk-on and to be able to get that opportunity, which I was so grateful for, all the coaches there, to allow me to be on that team and to allow me to develop my skills that really I had lost. I had been out of the sport for 3 years, but it demonstrated to me that when you set your mind to something and anything in life, that you can achieve it when you block out the naysayers, the critics, anything. But then when you're really focused on accomplishing something, you really can achieve it. That was I think my first real memory of success, of starting from the bottom, essentially, because I was an elite gymnast, but then I stopped and then I had to crawl my way back up. And so that
Wow.
was success at that point of my life.
Wow.
But now what I view as success is positively impacting others. We had spoke about, I set the goals, I achieved what I wanted to in academia and in sport, but now it's about giving back. So that's what I view as success. And it has, my perspective of success has definitely changed throughout the years.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. I love that. Yeah, that's such a clear yes. It's interesting because when we first start out, we think it's one thing, but then as we are living it, as we're achieving things, we change our view on things, and then other things become clearly more important. So I think that's a beautiful lesson. Okay, so as we are wrapping up, I want to give the floor to you and say, is there anything that you would love to, let's say, if you had the opportunity to say a message to the world, let's say you want everybody to know something, what would it be?
I would say this is one that it really does. I feel I would love to see everybody stretch their human potential. So dream big, be bold, take action. So I'll leave the audience for that with that message, because there's so much human potential yet to be tapped into. Believe in yourself, really dream big and be bold. When we talk about, Maria, we had spoke about being courageous, taking that first step, building that confidence, but that's where that be bold is. And then take action. It's one thing to have awesome ideas, but it's another thing to actually, take that first step, be in those trenches, so to speak, because you never know where that's going to lead you. So dream big, be bold, take action.
Oh my God, that's a perfect. Oh my God, I love that, because if you just said, a lot of people have a lot of ideas in their mind. They have a lot of things they wish to get done, but not everybody will actually take action and make those steps happen. So this is a strong reminder to anybody that has an idea or a passion or a calling or an intuitive guidance to go in a specific direction, even if the society is telling you that this is not real, this is not serious, this is not the norm. Still listen to your own inner voice, listen to your own intuition. Like you were saying, if you go forward on your rocking chair, right, when you're in your 80s, what would you wish to have done while you were here, while you were able to and do it, and don't think about it too much. That is such a beautiful lesson. So I want to say the last, I usually like to acknowledge the guests. So I want to acknowledge you for having such a strong passion and a kind of drive to bring positivity to the world, to bring inspiration to the world, to help as many people as you can, whichever way that is, whether it's teaching them in the person, or whether it's doing it through a podcast, or even creating new projects with your LinkedIn connections. Anything you touch, you have such a passion for, you have such a drive for, you have a lot of good intention with it, that I wish you to kind of keep growing, keep expanding, and keep inspiring. And I want to thank you so much for coming on.
Well, Maria, thank you first off for those kind words, but thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I was so excited to come onto this podcast. I know you and I were obviously speaking about this before, but you bring so much energy to what you're doing. Happy Life with Maria, and to be able to come together. This is lightning, positivity at its ultra, like it's just maximum of positivity here, but continue to do what you're doing, because you really are, you're making a positive impact in so many lives. But thank you so much for this opportunity, Maria, to be on your podcast.
Thank you so much. Okay, so now where can people find you? Because I'm going to link everything in the notes. Do you have LinkedIn? Do you have Instagram? I'll have to connect with you on Instagram. Yes.
Yes, please. So just to make it super simple, www.plentyofpositivity.com.
There you go.
And I have all the links to all the social media platforms that I'm on there. And as far as direct email, which I also do have on that website, but Courtney at plentyofpositivity.com.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Please reach out, though. I would love to hear from you.
Okay, well, thank you so much. So we're going to end this recording, and hopefully all of you guys found this uplifting, positive, and stay positive. Talk soon.